Look out, boxing fans. Boy Ash, what's poppin'? Want to give you a quick video on tomorrow night's fights. You got two-time, maybe even three-time world champion Malignaggi. I think it's two-time, two-division champion, facing off against one of the young guys, Showtime Shawn Porter. I think it's taking place in Brooklyn on the undercard of Hopkins Shumenov. Or maybe Shumenov Hopkins on the undercard. I don't really know. Just got back pretty much from Illinois. Been out of touch with boxing for about a month. Let's talk about it, man. We already know what Paulie come to do. Box your socks off, utilize the whole ring, utilizing slickness and movement, all behind a nice crisp jab. Tremendously fast hands. He was hampered by hand problems earlier in his career. Had several injuries and surgeries. There's been fights. He would take his glove off. You will see the blood gushing through the gauze. Just one of the many problems that fighters deal with when getting in that ring and fighting. He's dealt with it. And he was actually contemplating retirement early on in his career as well. Not a guy that has avoided a lot of competition. Now, granted, at 140, there was a lot of guys that he didn't face, but like I've said in previous videos, it's impossible to fight everybody. He was supposed to fight Alvarado for years before Alvarado even came to the world stage in his fights with Prescott and Brandon Rios and Provodnikov. Him and Paulie was supposed to do it a long time ago, and it never happened. Kendall Holt, Paulie never happened. It's a lot of guys that he went pro with all around the same division, and they never fought each other. Granted, they were prospects at the time, and they were being seasoned all at the same time. Holt, Malignaggi, Alvarado, somewhat, him being in Colorado, not really showcased on television, but his name was floating around as a potential opponent. It never took place. This is before Paulie even fought Miguel Cotto, before Paulie was even being considered as a member on the Contender, which didn't pan out as well. But the thing about it is he fought a lot of solid guys, so you can't hold it against him. Like I said before, you can't fight everybody. But he did well for himself at that weight. He's fought a lot of good guys, lost to some good guys, beat some good guys. I mean, it's just par for the course when you fight in good competition in the sport. And he was able to make some good money, and he continues to make some good money right now. But we're approaching the end of his career. He would be, I think, 34 this year, 33, 34. He's had a pretty good career, but it's on the downside. He's fighting at 47, which would probably be the highest weight he will campaign. In the amateurs, he fought around 132 or something like that, lightweight. And he's coming off a performance against a hometown kid. Another guy who should hang up the gloves by now, Zav Judah. Both guys from Brooklyn, both guys put it all on the line, and in the end, Paulie proved that he was a fresher fighter. He had much more left, and he beat the brakes off of Zav Judah, basically. But in this fight with Shawn Porter, he's fighting a young guy, a guy like 7, 8 years his junior. A guy who, like him, was a good amateur. He was an Olympic alternate. He fought at around 165 pounds. He was a big boy as an amateur. And he's coming off the biggest win of his career by just absolutely destroying Devin Alexander at welterweight, which is basically almost 20 pounds south of where he campaigned as an amateur. So not only is he going to be the bigger guy and the younger guy in the fight, he's very well conditioned. He's rough. He's rugged. He's campaigned as a professional at 54 before deciding to drop down to welterweight. So he basically enters the ring as a stronger fighter against most fighters, not just against Paulie. So it's an uphill battle. I believe if Paulie can get that jab pumping and get those legs moving and utilize that ring, I think he can have some success against Sean Porter. I mean, Paulie is the better boxer. He is more slick, but at the same time, Sean Porter is a fast fighter. He's strong, and one thing that he does that can um, make Malignaggi's game plan an uphill battle is smother him, smother his punching range, take the fight game inside, maul him to death, use his strength, tie him up, wrestle him a little bit, like Sean Porter does. He usually fights in close quarters. As soon as you take a step back, he's taking two forward while punching. And, it really makes for an ugly fight sometimes. And, the guys that he's in the ring with, they spend so much energy trying to keep him off and to try to, keep him from smothering him and wrestling him, that by the time they actually get some distance, they don't have the energy that they once had before, and it's hard to get that good game plan going on from a distance. And basically, I think it's going to be a very difficult fight for Malignaggi. This is not just your run-of-the-mill opponent. It's not going to be an opponent who's going to sit there and box with you. I think Team Porter would have to know that trying to outbox Paulie is probably going to be a losing strategy. So you got to use your strengths when you're in the ring with a guy of that ilk. You got to go in there, use your strength, use your size, cut off the ring, go to the body, make that moving target come to a standstill and punish him. Any other game plan outside of utilizing his strengths is probably going to be a losing strategy. He is the champion coming to defend in Paulie's hometown, if I'm not mistaken. I'm totally off. I don't even know. It could be I think it's in Brooklyn. It's where Hopkins has been fighting lately. So, and I just think it's going to be very difficult for Paulie to go 12 rounds with Sean Porter. He will go the distance. It's going to be an exhausting 12 rounds. I think Sean Porter is going to take the victory. Like I said, he's conditioned for the long route. He's strong. He's bigger. And he doesn't have better boxing skills, but he has a very wide array of skills in the ring. I mean, he can do a lot. He can do from the distance. He can do in close quarters. He can, fight you in a game of inches. He has a good first step. He has this herky-jerky type boxing style that by the time he gets in on you, you already playing defense. It's like deal with me. As soon as he gets in on you, you can't really get your offense going because he's already on your ass. But if Paulie can, pull off this particular fight, there are big things on the horizon for him. I would think it's still marketable. As you can see, they keep showcasing him on TV. I guess he's made for TV. He talks a good deal, and he's likable. He's not a bad guy. I think I met him one time when he was in Houston one time fighting Juan. And Paulie is likable from basically every particular, everywhere you look at it, he's likable. I mean, he's very cordial with the fans. He has a camaraderie with the fighters, loquacious with the media. Oh, don't let Ashley get you on that vocab. Hold up, my nigga. No, but at the end of the day, Paulie, what I'm saying, he's gonna be around for a long time, even if he don't fight. So, am I saying that he is definitively going to lose? No one can predict that. It's a fight. It's two men. They both got to get in there and make it happen through the course of 12 rounds. Whoever is the better guy that night is going to win. It's winnable on both sides. But being of the fact that, the intangibles favor the young man, the young champion, I'm probably going to have to roll with Porter on this one. I don't think if it's a closer fight than expected that it will. Well, it may go to Paulie. Like I said, if it's in the Barclays, it could definitely go to him. But I don't think Porter is gonna come to make a close fight. I think Paulie would end up having to hurt him for it to be a close fight. Other than that, I think Sean Porter is gonna probably try to maul Paulie to death and use his size and strength against him and his conditioning, and just probably beat on him for 12 rounds. Paulie doesn't have a lot of strength. Most people say he doesn't have a lot of strength to keep a guy off of him. A good jab gonna keep somebody off of him. I've seen good guys beaten with a jab only. So if he can get that jab going and keep that fat head of Sean Porter's on the other side of that jab, then he can have some success. Other than that, I think it's an uphill battle for him, and I think this is going to be another a solid defense for Sean Porter, and I think Sean Porter will move on to bigger and better things. I think Paulie will probably have to go back to the drawing board after this fight. His name is at a level where he probably won't have to be a contender all over again, have to fight his way to a big fight. I think a Malignaggi fight does represent a marquee fight at some level. Probably not at the pay-per-view level, but at the end of the day, you don't have to be a pay-per-view fighter to make some money in this game. That's where you make the bulk of your money if you were lucky to make it to that level, and most are not. So I think Porter's going to take this one. He's a young guy on the way up. He's had his bumps in the road, and the guys he was supposed to beat, he destroyed. The guy he did have difficult with, Julio Diaz, he did have an immediate rematch with him, and he righted that wrong. A lot of people were looking down on him because of that fight, including myself, and he didn't have to go back and fight him over again, but he did. So kudos to him. Let's see what happens in the fight. Next fight is going to be Hopkins and Beirut Shumenov. We already know what Hopkins comes to do. Hopkins has so many stages to his legacy that you really don't know what he's going to do in the ring. A prime Hopkins would maul your ass to death, get you in that corner, hit you on that hip, elbow you, shoulder you. If you lean on this shoulder, he would elbow on your headbutt. All on the referee's blind side. He would foul a guy so much referee would never see it. And his opponent, he'd be playing so many mental games on his opponent being there complaining all out of his fight game. And once Hopkins figured out that the guy was totally out of his game, Hopkins would go in and use his real skills and basically destroy the guy. And he did this time and time again. And the thing about it is, a lot of times guys didn't even see the real skills that Hopkins possessed because he never had to use them all. But over the course of his career, you were able to see that he wasn't a guy that just had to maul you to death and close the distance and beat on you and foul you. That he actually had pretty good boxing skills. When you look in that fight with Tito, I think he really revealed that he had a wider array of boxing skills than most people thought he had. If the only fight you ever saw with Hopkins was the Hopkins versus Keith Holmes, who was a champion himself, you would think Hopkins was just a dirty fighter. But at the end of the day, he's an all-around fighter. And the thing about it is, him fouling guys, it's only cheating if you get caught. The craftier veterans in the history of this game have been able to hide it from the referee, get away with it, and frustrate their opponent till they fight out of character, and boom, you either knock them out or embarrass them and hurt them real bad to the point where they can't even get back into the fight. That's Hopkins. He's old school. And like I said, we've seen so many versions of Hopkins. It's just a wonder that this guy can still do it at the elite level at his age. He's approaching 50. He continues to fight not only the top competition at his weight, these guys are younger and stronger. And, my hat is off to him. He's a true legend in the game. If there was anybody who ever earned their position to whether they can fight whoever they want to fight, it would be him. A lot of people saying that he should fight Kovalev and Adonis Stevenson. This is Hopkins. Don't be surprised if he fights those guys, because he's never been one to duck, and he's always pushing himself to the upper limit and schooling guys. You know what I'm saying? Schooling guys. So I'm not even gonna question him. You know who he fights next. You know he's fighting Beirut Shumenov. Don't know a whole lot about Shumenov. I seen him once. Strong fighter, but from the fight that I saw on him for him on ESPN2, like I say, he looks like a durable fighter, but he's trash. And I think once Hopkins put that slickness on him, it's gonna be an uphill battle for him. I think he's gonna be flailing at air, not hitting anything, and Hopkins is gonna take him to school. And if that doesn't happen, then Hopkins is done. You know, age has finally caught up to him. The ring has finally retired him, and he officially has been, gotten old overnight. He's already been old. I mean, I've picked against him like hundreds of times since he's been this age because I just don't believe that he can continue to do this over and over again, but yet he continues to surprise me. And I'm not going to pick against him on this time because the guy he's fighting is garbage, in my opinion. He's just durable. I don't think it's a knockout. I just think Hopkins is going to beat on him as long as old guy wants to stand there. He doesn't want to lose his title. He was a champion early in the game. I think he had only like 10 fights when he beat Campillo. And it is what it is, man. I think Hopkins is going to unify and or win this title. I don't even know if he still has a title anymore at this weight. Like I said, I've been out of pocket for a minute working, and Hopkins should dominate this guy. I think he can do it in impressive fashion. The guy is flat-footed. He can't box. He can fight, and he can go toe to toe with you. But if Hopkins elects not to go that route and use his skills, then the guy will be thoroughly embarrassed and lose his title on a grand scale. And you never know. In Hopkins' last fight, I think it was with Murat. I'm not sure. I watched it, and that was a very entertaining fight. And you can't really say that for a lot of Hopkins fights. He has stunk out the joint on many occasions, and he has put some entertaining fights out there as well. So you never know what you're gonna get when you're rolling with that alien. He's not the executioner no more. I think the last real execution was probably either William Joppy or Pavlik. May have been Tarver. I forget, man. Y'all gonna have to check BoxRec. There's been some guys that he fought that he absolutely demolished, and other guys he's embarrassed, and other guys he just stomped the joint out and won the fight. But at the end of the day, he's beating these guys, continuing to add to his legacy. Is one of the best to ever put on a pair of gloves. The road wasn't paved for him. He didn't come out of the amateurs as a highly touted prospect. He had to fight a lot of tough guys coming up the road. As we all know, he lost his first professional fight. I believe it was at light heavyweight. And he had to earn his ranking. Even when he lost his first world title fight with Roy Jones, he didn't give up. He kept, pushing and pushing and pushing, fighting in clubs, low budget joints, turd circuits, all type, whatever you want to call it, man. My hat is off to him. He really came up the hard way. A lot of guys say they came up the hard way and they weren't given anything. No, Hopkins was not given anything. The guys that were placed on the other side of him, he had to fight them and keep beating those guys until he earned his right to fight a big money, high market, marquee fighter, and then destroy him. And he hasn't looked back since. So my hat is off to the alien. And I think he'll be winning this fight via decision. And also got Porter by decision. Paulie's tough, man. He's not going nowhere. You can beat on him all 12 rounds. He's not going nowhere. If Cotto ain't knocking him out, nobody's knocking him out. At least I don't think so. Porter has never fought at 40. He's not a small guy. And it's amazing that this guy can even, campaign at welterweight. His diet has to be on a whole different page than everybody else. And you know what? If you can make that weight comfortably and perform comfortably at that weight, then guess what? Make that weight and fight. And I just think it's going to be an uphill battle for anybody at their weight to fight Sean Porter. He's not a small dude. He's not weak. and he's conditioned, and he's young. Tough to beat him. Don't let me add the skill level in there, and then you got a tough fight. So and he proved he can fight righteys or lefties too. So that's another feather in his cap. But I'm a real reporter on that one. That's all I got for right now. I'm gonna holler at you. It's your boy Ash. Twos.